welcome into the Blogger Bowl Week 1 preview. We had a mini preview for Thursday's action, or tonight's action, I should say, on Tuesday. Today it's the real deal. We got a full slate of games on Saturday. Dan's rocking his hopefully soon-to-be sponsor Home Field Apparel t-shirt. Dan, what do we got today? What's the story behind it?
So I was going to do some show solidarity. If you're new to the program, first time, long time for the 6 episodes that we've done, you can probably guess by the apparel being worn by my co-hosts that they are Notre Dame fans. I was going to wear my Notre Dame subscription shirt because I'm not a Notre Dame fan. We can skip when we talk about the game, but there's no in between with Notre Dame. You either love them or you hate them. I was just raised to hate Notre Dame. Nothing more other than I was raised to hate Notre Dame. Indifferent, and it's one of my favorite home field shirts. It's a really good shirt. And so I was going to wear it, and then I was like, oh, man, no, I have a West Virginia shirt. I was like, I should wear that. And then I realized I messed up, that I should have worn that when we talked about the Thursday night games on Tuesday, and then I should have worn the Notre Dame one today. Then I couldn't find my West Virginia shirt. Tennessee's playing tonight, so I figured I would rock the home sweet home to me. Me, proud Georgia native who grew up hating Tennessee football, wearing a Tennessee shirt.
I feel like with how many home field apparel shirts, I mean, hell, you got a Tennessee football shirt on. You don't like Tennessee. I feel like you have to be getting some sort of deal from them now, just with how many shirts you bought. You got to be on some sort of VIP list, right?
I am an All-American. No, I am an All-American. I get free shipping for life.
Okay.
Yeah.
We like that.
I had the subscription last year for their big new Saturday, which they just retired. So I have a bunch of home field shirts. But we can stop talking about that and we can start talking some ball. I don't know if you guys know this, but college football season is here. And I think we should do this every week where we should say college football season is here because college football season was here last week, but college football starts
now.
Tonight.
It's really here. I guess we would not be wrong if every week we start by saying college football season is here because it still would.
It's true
here.
Until we get to the national championship.
Don't even say it. Don't even say it. I don't even want to think about that.
I mean, the national championship game's next week.
It is always amazing how quickly college football season flies by.
It does. It's crazy.
We're going to blink and we're going to be doing a Tuesday Maction live stream, which, yes, by the way, folks, look ahead to those when we're doing some Tuesday Maction live streams.
I feel like we kind of get in, the first month, you kind of ease into it, cool college football, awesome, neat. And then you blink and then it's December. I feel like October, I feel like September, I wouldn't say it goes fast, but I would say it's nice. And then suddenly it just feels like October, because when October you have the NFL's in full swing, you have the baseball playoffs, you have that weekend every year where it's it's different now though, because I was looking at the schedule the other day to kind of see what was going to coincide with the NLDS this year. Because for those of you who aren't baseball fans, we're staring down a scenario where we could have the Mets are in the middle of a magical season. So you could have Mets Magic versus the Cardinals Devil Magic, and then Braves Dodgers year 4 in a row in the NLDS. And I was like, that would be sweet. But the early parts of those series are during the week. So you get to the if necessary on the weekend. So, but there's that, but the point of this, there's that weekend every year, which is now wild card weekend, where you would get 4 baseball games a day, playoff games that start at 1, 3:30, 5, whatever, and football on Saturday and Sunday, and then the NBA and hockey start. So yeah, I mean, long story short, it kind of just September kind of eases in because baseball season's kind of winding down, and who cares? Football's still new, and then you get into October and November, and the next thing you know, we're going to be talking about the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. Finally, a proper sponsor for that piece of shit at a baseball stadium.
Bad Boy Mowers doesn't sponsor the Gasparilla Bowl anymore?
No,
which is sad. What's really sad is RIP to my sweet prince, the Beef O'Brady's Bowl.
I mean, I have this theory. I can't believe I'm doing this now in September of week 1, but I have this theory or this belief that, you know how on Game of Thrones or those fantasy epics, it's he's such and such, son of this, duke of this, whatever, and they just list the whole full title. I think every bowl should have to list its entire lineage of whatever it's been called.
Yes,
agreed. The Rose Bowl is just the Rose Bowl, but it's the Beef O'Brady's Gasparilla Tampa Bowl or whatever it is. Give me the whole thing.
Everything.
And fun fact, Auto Parts Store CarQuest follows me on Twitter because I said that on Twitter that the CarQuest Bowl is I think the Camping World Bowl now. They saw it and they follow me on Twitter. So there you go. I've wasted a lot of time.
That was bullshit Bulls talk, which I think the three of us can talk about anytime, anywhere for any amount of time, but we'll save that until we get to Bullshit Bowl season.
Yeah.
Should we just hop right into the main events here, guys? We got three. We pegged 3 or 4. I think big time main event matchup. There's 5 now.
We added 5. We made it 5.
We made it 5. We have some really good teams, some really big programs, and some games we're intrigued by. Should we start it off with the big elephant in the room, the one that Phil and I care most about, and Dan's probably going to try and take down our dreams about, Notre Dame, Ohio State?
I'm not going to try to take your dreams down necessarily, but I have a point about that game that in my mind kind of tangentially relates one of my big thoughts about that game to Georgia-Oregon, which is the second game on the list. So combined with the fact that you guys care way more about this game than I do, and it's not that I don't care about this game like I do. I'm very excited to watch it, but I just have no emotional investment in it. So we'll kick it off. So we'll start. I even put these on bars. Number 5, Notre Dame at number 2, Ohio State, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, which we had a little snafu time-wise because I'm in the Eastern time zone. The other 2 guys are in the Central time zone, but Eastern time. Ohio State is 17.5-point favorite. 59.5 is the total on that one. I mean, there's so many angles, so many ways that you can think about this game, talk about this game. So I'll throw it out since Matt and I are part of the BetSperts team. So I would say Phil is kind of joining the BetSperts family here for the show. I'll let Phil start us off here on what are your thoughts? Like, what is your overarching thought about this game?
2 things. What I think will be really interesting right away is if Notre Dame can come out and effectively run the ball. If Notre Dame can come out and their offensive line can take it to a good, not great, but super talented defensive line of Ohio State, I think Notre Dame will have a chance to win this game. My heart is saying they can, but my head is saying take Notre Dame in the points because I do still think Notre Dame's offensive line is going to get theirs, eat up some clock, but not just eat up some clock, but punch Ohio State in the mouth a little bit and play pretty physical. I think Jim Knowles' defense is going to take a little bit to really get in the swing of things. So I think Notre Dame is going to get theirs. But if they can really effectively run the ball early and often, you'll see Tyler Buchner be able to take advantage of that. And so I think his ability to pull the ball when he needs to pull the ball, have some like quarterback, leads off the left side when you have Michael Mayer and things like that. I think if he can get comfortable and they can run the ball effectively enough, he has the opportunity to make some play action and deep shot plays because then you'll see Ohio State creeping up. So for me, that's absolutely the key of the game for Notre Dame is if their offense can control part of the game, because if they get down early, this Notre Dame, Tyler Buchner on the road at night is not a come from behind team, is not a let's get in a shootout team. One interesting statistic that I do want to highlight, how many times in Ohio State's history do you think they've lost when they've scored 35 points or more?
3. 0?
I was going to say 2.
They have never lost when they've scored.
That's an insane stat for how long they've been playing football.
It's crazy. I read that this morning and I was shocked. So again, if Notre Dame is going to win this game, unless they're going to break like a wild statistical anomaly that is, again, 100%, then they have to hold Ohio State to under 35 points, which is a tall task against this offense. So kind of the way that Notre Dame can pull this off, and I do think they cover. I'll get that out there. I really do think they cover. I think they show up, whether it's a backdoor cover late, I think they cover. For them to win, I think some voodoo magic has to happen where I think it has to be either, kind of a crazy turnover, a call go their way, a special teams blunder, or something that makes you say like that was a little bit voodoo magic. So that's where I'm at right now, feeling comfortable, but not confident by any means.
Yeah, Matt, you talked about the Tyler Buchner factor, and for me, shocker that the Notre Dame quarterback is the X factor for me coming into this game. But all signs from camp have said that he's had a really good camp. He looks like he's ready to take the job. And his ability to run the read option, his ability to use his legs, I think is going to be the ultimate X factor in this game. If he can do that effectively, again, I'm with you, Phil. It's going to take a whole lot for Notre Dame to actually win this game outright. I don't think they're going to do that. I'm not crazy. Will I sprinkle something on the money line an hour before kickoff? Probably. Beer, I'll be ready to go. If he can run the ball effectively, if he can freeze linebackers, freeze defensive ends, and then kind of force Michael Mayer into one-on-one matchups, I think that's going to be huge for Notre Dame's ability to chunk the ball down the field. And I think that's they're not going to be a huge big play team. They're going to take a couple shots, especially if they are able to run the ball effectively, because the couple things they do have going for them at wide receiver is speed. Lorenzo Styles and Braden Lindsey can run really, really fast. And if they have linebackers, they have safeties creeping up because they know they have to respect the run. They have to respect the quarterback read option. That's obviously going to be something the deep ball is something they're going to try on some play action. So Buckner being able to run the ball, then being able to run that read effectively, and essentially him taking up another defender is going to be huge for that offense. If they can't do it, it's going to be a long night. And then defensively, easier said than done. You're never going to take away the big play from Ohio State, but you have to try to limit the big plays. You have to do your best to play bend, don't break defense and make them not beat you over the top. Again, easier said than done. Jackson Smith and Jigba is probably going to score a really long touchdown at some point in this game. Marvin Harrison Jr. probably going to have a really long catch, but you have to do your best to limit those big plays and make CJ Stroud beat you by chunking you down the field, because Nebraska was a team that did that, and they struggled against Nebraska. Michigan was a team that did that. They struggled against Michigan. That's going to be your X factor on defense. The secondary is one of their strong suits. They have Brandon Josephson from Northwestern. They have 3 returning starters at cornerback. You're going to have to play, technically sound, don't get beat over the top, keep everything in front of you defense. And again, with Ohio State's talent at receiver, that's a whole lot easier said than done, but that's kind of the path for them, to have long, methodical drives. They kind of beat you up front with Ohio State, and then defensively, just don't get beat over the top often, because they're going to do it at some point.
So here's my thing about this game. I'm not like the wet blanket guy or whatever. Like, I think that Notre Dame has been in tier 2, tier 3 team very respectably. Like, the year they went to 2 years ago was the pandemic year they were in the playoff. I thought they deserved to be in the playoff. This is a very, very, very good program and a very, very, very good team. They're just playing in a game that they've basically are probably not going to have much of a chance to win for no reason other than the fact they're just playing a team that's a lot better than them. I'm interested about a lot of things, and this isn't actionable, but like the perception of the Notre Dame program against good teams, like it is what it is. We talked about it when Nebraska, like your record says about you, like the record says you are what you are. Mm-hmm. And this is from the Stanford Steve and the Bear podcast the other day. Notre Dame away from home against top 10 teams. There are 0 for their last 10 with a 16.4 points per game margin of defeat. Away from home against top 5 teams, they've lost their last 11 by 19.6 points per game. That's not actionable. That has nothing to do with what's going to happen, but that's the perception that they're facing right now. And I think that's a very interesting challenge for Marcus Freeman. And I think Marcus Freeman, to me, is the thing I'm most interested in this game, because I don't care what he said at any point this year about what his plans are as a coach. Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And my concern, it has nothing to do with Marcus Freeman. It has everything to do with the fact that Marcus Freeman is a defensive head coach. And anytime you hire a defensive head coach, my question's always going to be, how aggressive is their mindset going to be when their offense is on the field? I know they've got continuity with Tommy Rees. I know Tommy Rees is very popular there. I know that like people really like what he's done, but defensive coaches tend to be a little bit more conservative. And is this going to be a situation where Notre Dame, they get the ball around midfield and it's 4th and 6, and he's going to be punting the ball in those situations and playing for a close loss instead of really going for a win? I have no idea. Like, I don't think that bowl games other than playoff games and national championship games matter. So for my purposes and my official record book, to steal the parlance of a very popular sports radio show, this is his first game as a head coach. Yep. And we don't know what, and I think the hire was, I'm rooting for him. I think like Marcus Freeman in how many ever months making Notre Dame a likable program.
It's wild.
Been like one of the wildest developments in college football in a very long time. I'm really rooting for him. And I have no opinion one way or another over whether I think he's going to do this or not. It is just the thing that always stands out to me is defensive-minded head coaches tend to be fairly conservative, and that's not the way that you're going to beat Ohio State. You're going to have to take some if they're going to have a realistic chance to win this game, which I really don't think they do that much. They're going to have to be aggressive. They're going to have to go for some 4th downs. They're going to have to, go for maybe some pump blocks if they get Ohio State in that situation. They might have to do a much less ill-advised onside kick than Nebraska did the other day. Like, they're going to have to take some chances if they're going to want to win this game. And I don't know if that's in his nature. I don't know if it's not. I have no idea. And so I'm fascinated, and know Phil has some thoughts. So tell me I'm
Go
wrong.
ahead, Phil. I have some thoughts too, but I want to hear what you say.
Just the one thing to add in, which is a bit of a wrinkle that Notre Dame hasn't had in the past, is that their special teams coordinator, Brian Mason, comes over from Cincinnati, who was one of the best special teams unit in the country. Specifically, they had the most blocked punts in the country last year. So I expect from an aggression standpoint to see some of those aggressive standpoints come from special teams. So that's just something to monitor where, again, for Notre Dame to pull off the win in this game, something like that is going to have to happen, where it's going to be like a huge momentum swing that's not just pure lineup between the tackles and win. Because as you mentioned, currently Ohio State is a more talented roster from top to bottom.
Matt?
And you talked about, Marcus Freeman and defensive head coaches intending to play these games more conservative. You can't really play these road games, these big-time road games, much more conservative than Brian Kelly played them. Mm-hmm. So I'm intrigued by that, but more so, how does this team look under Marcus Freeman in a adverse situation on the road? Like when it was Brian Kelly, the first sign of trouble, with the exception of maybe the Georgia game where they kept it close and had on paper chance to kind of come back and tie the game late, which they never really were going to do, but they were in that game till the end. With the exception of that game, they always played really conservative. They always played, first sign of trouble, you kind of knew it was just about over, and then the second sign of trouble, it really was over. That was, in my firm opinion, because like you said, with Nebraska, you are what your record says you are. You are, who you are at the end of it. And that's kind of what happened for Brian Kelly in every big game he played, not at Notre Dame Stadium. So I'm really intrigued to see the mindset of the players in the program under their new head coach, how they respond to those reactions, because that's a direct result of how your head coach responds to them, how your coaching staff responds to them. It does seem like there's a different vibe in the building. It does seem like there is, like you said, Dan, making it a little bit more of a likable, fun program, which is a wild thing to say about Notre Dame, because if you're not a Notre Dame fan, chances are you hate them. But again, like you said, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, and you are who you don't know who you are until you actually kick it off and you're in between the white lines on Saturday night. So I'm interested to see if kind of this is a different team, if it's a little bit of a same old, if it's kind of in between somewhere, where they go from here, because we saw in the bowl game against Oklahoma State, and I'm with you, Dan, bowl games are fun, but they don't really mean much. But in that game, they were pretty aggressive. Part of that was because they just couldn't run the ball because they're banged up on the offensive line, and they didn't have Kyrie Williams because he sat out for the draft. But they could not run the ball. But Jack Cohn threw the ball about 70 times. Like they really did go for it a lot. They took their chances. But again, quote unquote meaningless game against Oklahoma State. So I don't know if that's going to carry over against Ohio State. Obviously, they want to run the ball more, but I'm cautiously optimistic that the aggression is going to be there, at least to an extent, because it does seem like Tommy Rees kind of has full control of this offense. But we're going to see. There's a lot of questions to be answered, I think, more so on the Notre Dame side, but for both programs.
Dan, one quick question for you, Dan. Just objectively, because the Notre Dame likability has gone up, I'd say for the past however many years, collectively, people will be rooting for not Notre Dame in this game. Do you think there is a majority of people watching this game who will be rooting for Notre Dame because of this likability and because of some of the Ohio State kind of douchebaggery, I'll say, in general, of their fan base? More just would like your opinion as a non-Notre Dame fan.
I think there's going to be I think most people are going to be fairly neutral, because I don't think the Notre Dame hate is generational. It is. Yeah. It's just it's one of those things that it's been decades and decades and decades, and they kind of wandered the wilderness for some years where they weren't exactly relevant on the national stage, at least in terms of competing for big bowl games and championships and whatever. But that hate is generational. But I do think when you talk about least popular programs in college football amongst the general public, I still think Notre Dame is number one. But I do think Ohio State's in the top five. I think the top five are probably Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, and pick someone else, throw it in there. So, yeah, I mean, I think there will be some people who will just tend to root for the underdog there in that game. But I think that is going to be a hard ask in a lot of ways. My last thought on this, because I just wanted to I think it's going to be closer than the final score will indicate. I think Ohio State's going to get a late cover in this game. I think I'm like 41-20, something like that. I think Notre Dame's going to play well. Just to put a bow on it, like they're a really good team playing a team that's better than them on the road. Like, there's not a lot that's going to go that way. Do you have anything
Did we
else
do
to
a
add?
good job of being as impartial as we could in this breakdown?
I had no doubt that you would. I can be impartial and tell you right now that today I bet Alabama minus 17.5 next week. That has nothing to do with that. We'll talk about that game next week. The next game on the list, we're going to head down to my hometown in Atlanta, Georgia, as number 11 Oregon visits number 3 Georgia. Georgia, like similar to the just.
No, Dan, this is a neutral site game. Remember, it's a neutral site game. This isn't a Georgia home game.
Yeah, it's a Georgia home game. Georgia 16.5 point favorite, 52.5 is the total. And there was something that wanted to connect these games, this with the Notre Dame game in my mind, and it is this. I don't care what Dan Lanning has said in the past. Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And my concern when you hire a first-time head coach who was a defensive coordinator is just how aggressive are they going to be in situations when their backs are up against the wall. Marcus Freeman was at Notre Dame. He got promoted from within. He, kept Tommy Rees around. There was some continuity with that program, and there was a lot of unknowns there, I think. Dan Lanning has no connection to Oregon. He is not from the Pacific Northwest. He didn't play there. He didn't coach there. They just basically, I think they wanted to keep kind of a similar mindset of what Mario Cristobal did and went out and got a guy from that part. I mean, Miami and Georgia are kind of tangentially related, but a guy who is known for being a good recruiter, coached in that part of the country. He's doing his own thing. And people are like, oh, well, it's Dan Lanning against Georgia. Well, he didn't bring anybody from Georgia with him. He is doing his own thing. We have no idea what to expect from Oregon. And my thing is I don't know why he would need to bring anyone from the offensive staff from Georgia with him. And he knows that the only way that they're going to have a chance in this game is if they can get themselves in a spot where they make Stetson Bennett have to beat them. Are they just going to be able to be physical enough to hang with this Georgia team? Because that's what they're going to have to do. The Bo Nix story is interesting. Bo Nix is a third-generation Auburn Tiger, so the Georgia hate in that family runs deep, and now he's at Oregon. I think the one thing that I think gives them a fighting chance in this game is they have a lot of continuity on the offensive line. That is a thing that you're going to hear from me a lot. If a team has lost talent elsewhere, if they've got an offensive line that has some continuity and was a good unit before, they're going to be able to stand up to them. But, man, Travis Dye, CJ Verdell are gone. They have talented but inexperienced wide receivers. No Kayvon Thibodeau, but the defense is pretty solid. 2 really good linebackers with Flo and Sewell. So I just this is another game that I'm kind of interested to see as a measuring stick for where Oregon is. I've seen a lot of people who seem to think hey, Oregon, they might have hey, they can hang. They are talented, and they are. The 24/7 talent composite came out. They're the 7th most talented roster in college football. But again, playing a virtual road game against a team much more talented than them, it's a lot to ask.
Yeah, to me seems a little. It kind of reminds me to a certain extent of the Clemson and Georgia opener last year, where I think Oregon, which is weird to say, is going to try to be physical ball control, similar to what Notre Dame is going to try to do, even more to a more extreme extent. But I just kind of see this one where, I don't trust Bo Nix. I've talked about that. I don't think he's very good. I don't trust him against Georgia. I do trust Stetson Bennett against just about anybody. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's proven himself to be a pretty darn good college quarterback. And I see this one as kind of like a 27-10, some sort of Georgia kind of bullies them on defense. Oregon is able to do a few things nice, maybe reels off a big run, but they're going to try to play the ball possession game because that offensive line, probably because of Dan Lanning's mindset as a defensive-minded head coach. He's not going to want to be getting the defense back on the field every 2 minutes. But Georgia, in the end, is just going to be more talented. They just have more talent. It is a new unit, so there might be, a few mishaps here and there. But I just see it as a game where Oregon's going to kind of try to bully them and maybe have a little bit of success early on. But at the end, Georgia's just going to be too good and just kind of outlast them and win, not 10-3 like they did against Clemson last year, but like I said, 24-10, 27-10, something along those lines.
Yeah, I'm more along the lines of that as well, where I'm looking at this under, and I like
I
it.
love it.
The spread I'm sticking away from, because again, I don't really know what Bo Nix is going to be when he shows up, because throughout his career he's flashed like some weird freak athleticism, grit, makes plays out of nowhere, but then just is terrible sometimes. So it's like I think we'll probably see some flashes of Bo Nix early, and I think there'll be some early chatter on Twitter being like, "Oh man, new look, Bo Nix is killing it," and then he kind of fades late, because it's just I don't think that style of play is sustainable against this physical and this aggressive and this just good of a defense, where you can only make so many of those like flashy get hit type plays in a game like this. So again, I still like Georgia in this game. I like Stetson Bennett to control this game if it gets a bit wonky. He is a veteran leader of that team. So I like Georgia. Don't love the under, and staying away from the spread.
I mean,
Dan, you talked about it with Ohio State, how like there could be a late cover. That these games where you have one really good team against one team that's like good but not on that level, these like middling kind of spreads, I guess is a bigger one, scare me because like Oregon can be in this game and then just kind of with 8 minutes left fade off and big mistake, and then you don't cover because of a bad play, like one little mistake, and you don't cover because that team's that much better than you. So that's why I feel I'm with like these spreads scare me. Same thing with Notre Dame. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
The weird thing is like in my head, I feel like this is a game where I feel a little contrarian. I'm not playing anything on this game because I just want to watch it and don't have a real good feeling. And it's kind of like a fact-finding mission on both of these teams right now. But there is part of me that does see the scenario where people are just like talking about what Georgia did last year and how all of their big games against good teams went under until they played Alabama. But man, there's so many new players on that defense, and we talked about it in the preview show. I think this defense is going to be awesome at some point. I'm just not sure that the defense is going to be awesome right now. Like this Oregon defense, the only team that they played last year with an offensive line that was as good as what Oregon has is Michigan, and that game is a little different. Like that Georgia defense was just so tuned up. I would have liked to have seen what Michigan had on their offensive line last year against this year's Georgia defense. Probably is a bit more of a fair matchup. I'm just not entirely certain to expect that all of Georgia games are going to be just super low scoring right out of the gates. I also think that they're probably going to put a little bit more trust in Stetson Bennett. And this is the kind of thing that if this game is close late, like these are the kind of games where it might be the situation where we've talked about like Heisman, my Heisman top 4 finish. Like I don't think Stetson Bennett's going to put up huge numbers, but he might be in a situation where if he has to lead drives late a few times, that can bolster his whole legacy in this. And that's something that I'm kind of just rooting to see. Also, my older brother went to the University of Georgia, and even though in the span of 3 months he saw the Braves and Georgia win championships, I hope Georgia plays well just so that I don't get inundated with angry text messages during the Georgia game. You guys want to move on?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Our next one, a fascinating game. Again, another first-year head coach, but this one brings some experience with him as why am I blanking right now suddenly on his name? Oh, my God.
Billy Napier. I did it the other day when we talked about this game. I couldn't remember his name, Billy Napier.
Billy Napier in Florida host number 7 Utah, 7 p.m. at the Swamp. Utah 2.5-point favorite, 51.5 is the total. I have some thoughts, but I've been kind of dominating the start of these thoughts, so I'll let you guys go and see what you guys think on this one.
People know that I love Cam Rising if they've listened to this so far. So I'm, again, the stat that I really like about Utah in general is that they're one of 25 teams in college football to return their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, and quarterback. So I think continuity going into the first game, especially going against a new head coach in a new place, is really important because you know what they've done against the Fire. I think people think about like the last impression is blowing a lead versus Ohio State last year, like a supremely talented Ohio State team. But what people kind of forget is Utah's backup running back was starting at corner for that game. So it's like, yeah, they gave up massive amounts of yards at the end because Ohio State was like, oh, there's a running back playing corner. So I like Utah in this game. I love their defense. I like Cam Rising. I love his Buccaneers goatee. And I think they're going to not only win, but I think they're going to cover in relatively easy fashion. I'm also not buying AR-15 to start this game. I think again, it's going to be a really good defense in his first big time start. So that's a quarterback for Florida. So pretty simple on my end. I'm taking Utah and taking the points.
Yeah, I think if you're Florida and you win the coin toss, you definitely want to take the ball and try and go down and score right away. It seems to me like one where Florida might start out a little bit fast because they are going to be juiced up. New head coach, not basically new quarterback, very talented quarterback, played a little bit at the end of last year. But for Utah, I mean, as most road games and most sports are, if they can just kind of weather that early storm and force Florida into an early mistake, I think we're going to kind of see Utah run downhill with it just because, I mean, Dan talked about it with the offensive line. Phil talked about it with the coordinators. It's the whole team for Utah. The continuity is just there. They bring back so many starters on offense, a lot of talent on defense, both coordinators. And people keep saying, well, I see Florida gaining some steam and, the humidity is going to be tough to play in for Utah. I'm not really buying too much into that factor. I mean, Utah plays at some altitude too, so it's not like the easiest to breathe there when they're practicing. Like, I don't really buy that. I think that cancels things out. You're going to see Florida probably start kind of hot, maybe pick up some big plays, try and make a big play early. And then I just think Utah weathers that storm and is just the better football team. And once that first mistake happens from Florida, I don't think they respond. I think they have probably the right guy at head coach. I like Billy Napier. I think they're talented. I think they have a good quarterback. I just think it's too many brand new question marks against too much continuity on one side.
So my question, I brought up the 24/7 recruiting or their talent composite. And here's the thing. I've been high on Utah. I have a Cam Rising bet. I've been talking all off season about how I would take them over USC to win
the real you
conference. And then I've just been sitting here thinking for like the last week, probably because I've been staring at all of this stuff for so long now, like cold weather team going to play on the road in a hostile environment in the SEC against a team that just in terms of raw talent is a lot more talented than they are. Like just in terms of like recruiting talent and all of that, the ability that Florida has on this roster, I'm sitting here saying, man, are we gassing this Utah team up too much? But the problem is like we have no idea who on this Florida team is good. Like Anthony Richardson is a guy who can really make things difficult for Utah. Utah's defense lost a lot of talent off of it. And if they aren't quite up to speed yet, he's the kind of guy who is going to be just so difficult for them to contain. That said, is there a program in college football with a better, more consistent and steady culture than Utah? Like, I just don't know that there's a team. Like, Kyle Whittingham is a coach who has done, I think, better than anybody getting the most out of a roster year in and year out of anybody in college football. There's some other guys that you can throw on that list for certain. Like Kirk Ferentz probably would have a national championship right now if he wasn't just so concerned with being a nepotistic dictator. But he's a guy. We've seen Wisconsin has a culture, like so on and so forth. But they are just so steady. But, man, I feel like underestimating any team with the amount of talent Florida has at home in a game where all they've heard all offseason is about how much they suck. Like, and this is something I wanted to say about the Oregon game, but it's related to this one. If I was Dan Lanning, my offseason plan would have been just put the 2 Utah games on a loop in their football facilities last year to see how much Utah just kicked the shit out of them both games, just bullied them in both of those games. And Oregon needs to be able to stand up to that to Georgia, but that's what Utah does. They are a team that is going to be physical as hell. They're going to beat you up, and that's what they're going to do. And I have absolutely no idea if Florida has the capability to hold up to that or not. None whatsoever. That's why I have no idea what's going to happen at this point anymore, and I'm just excited to watch it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, and that's kind of, I think, goes back to my point. I'm interested to see how Florida responds after that first mistake, because there's going to be a mistake. There's going to be a Utah big play somewhere down the line. Happens both sides in every football game. How Florida comes back and bounces back from that is a pretty talented, but we don't know how actually good they are type of team. Really talented quarterback. We don't know how actually good he is yet. I'm interested to see how they respond. That's the most cliched football word in the history of football is respond, but how they respond to adversity is going to be really the key to that game, I think, for me.
Absolutely. Speaking of games that I have no idea what to expect is going to happen, which is why I wanted to talk about
Love
it.
those.
23 Cincinnati at number 19 Arkansas, 3:30 p.m. from Fayetteville, Arkansas, a 6.5 point favorite, a 51.5 point total. And man alive, if you can look into the crystal ball and tell me what's going to happen in this game, like sign me up for your tout service, because like what the fuck? Like I don't want to cuss that much on this show, but
That's fine. We're cool with it.
It's warranted.
I have no idea what like either of these teams are. Like Cincinnati, 6 guys on defense gone. They lost Sauce, they lost Kobe Bryant, they lost Desmond Ritter off their offense. But like Oregon, they have a ton of continuity on their offensive line, and that is massive because they lost their running backs. Their skill position guys are questionable. I don't even know if they've announced a quarterback yet. I know the kid from Eastern Michigan transferred in, and they had another highly touted recruit that came in, but we have no idea who's going to play that game. But like Utah, they have a really well-established culture, and Luke Fickell is a really good coach at getting that team up to speed. I don't think this program is going to fall off the face of the earth. However, this is a really, really dicey game against an Arkansas team that has questions of their own. Don't really know what to expect out of this Arkansas team. Their defense was decimated. Like I think they have like 3 starters back on defense. Bumper Pool is basically the only guy in the front 7 who's back, all name team first teamer. So there's some question marks on their defense. They're a team that is talented, but not like the top end talent in that league that can just churn guys out. So like Treylon Burks was the do everything guy, compliment to KJ Jefferson, who is back this year. Again, a team that has established a culture very quickly under Sam Pittman of a team that is just going to want to beat the shit out of you. It's going to be an ugly game. I think it's just going to be ugly, ugly, ugly. I think maybe a Cincinnati team total under might be in play. I have no idea. Do you guys have any idea?
No, I mean, I like KJ Jefferson, the quarterback. I thought he's a pretty underrated quarterback in the SEC. I think he can do some good things. But again, when you're replacing Desmond Ritter, who was at Cincinnati for 15 years, as well as, Alec Pierce on offense, the running back who transferred from Alabama, like they're losing some good skill positions, and they're losing, as you mentioned, like some real talent on defense. Not like talent for Cincinnati, but elite level talent that stepped in starting day one in the NFL at cornerback. And when you lose elite cornerbacks, when you lose your offensive talent, you think it's the end of the world. But Dan, as you mentioned, they bring back a lot on the offensive line, and Luke Fickell's a great coach. So like that's why this line in this game absolutely terrify me. And it's truly, as a cop out, like a wait and see game, because this will really put to the test, okay, is Cincinnati for real in terms of a group of 5 team that's going to be consistently competing with the big boys? Because they've been recruiting at a pretty high level. Luke Fickell's a really good coach, but can you say they've been led by just elite defensive players and a lot of continuity and some, honestly, much better than their rating guys on offense? Or does it have to do with player and talent and coaching development as well as part of that? So it's like an impossible game to predict. If I had to go one way, I'd go Arkansas, because it's at Arkansas and SEC County. The game's going to be, I'm assuming, super hyped up. The people in Arkansas have been craving some good football. They've gotten some glimmers of hope. And so this is a bigger game for Arkansas than it is for Cincinnati, in my opinion. Much bigger, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice having that continuity on the offensive line come back. But when there's question marks literally everywhere else on offense, it takes you somewhere, but it doesn't really get you, I think, as far as you need to go. And like Phil, you were saying, obviously they've lost a ton of not just college football talented players on defense, like NFL starter caliber player on defense. There's too many question marks for me with Cincinnati. And I don't love this line. I don't love this game. But even though Arkansas lost some guys, back their quarterback, they bring back some talent. This game says a lot for me. This game is going to tell me a lot about them, because I think this could be, it's hard to say a statement game, but like if they want to establish, they're never going to be the top tier of the SEC, or at least miles away from that. But if they kind of want to firmly entrench themselves in that next level, I think they have to go win and make a statement in this game. And I don't think Arkansas fans are feeling all that good about it if they come away with 31-20 in. against a team in Cincinnati that you don't really know much about. That's a Group of 5 team. Even though they were in the playoff last year, I think I have a vacuum cleaner going outside. If you don't know anything about this Cincinnati team, and I think most of these Group of 5 teams, after they have these really big years, they don't necessarily have a bad year to follow up, but there's always a rebuilding process as opposed to a reloading process. So I think this is a pretty important game for Arkansas to go out and make somewhat of a statement if they want to kind of jump to the next level of the program to the next level. Excuse me, this vacuum cleaner's throwing me off, and kind of get themselves out of that basement program level of the SEC.
They have Arkansas, to your point about this being a big game. Arkansas has
They have an interesting non-conference schedule.
They have the funniest non-conference game of the year in college football. They're hosting Bobby Petrino and Missouri State on Family Weekend. But their other non-conference games are BYU and Liberty. BYU is a road game. They have to go to A&M. They have to go to Mississippi State. They get Alabama at home. Great. They have to go
Why
to
would
Auburn.
they schedule going to BYU?
I don't know, man. So, like, to your point, like, yeah, I mean, that's a big game. I think this is going to be a good opportunity for Barry Odom to show why people think he's probably one of the top 3 or 4 defensive coordinators in college football, because that Arkansas defense lost a lot, but he has turned that defense around in a pretty big way. I mean, they had some games where they kind of blew up last year. But, I mean, again, this is a program that went from completely desolate and hopeless to a program that is going to just be a gigantic pain in the ass. Like, Arkansas football in the 21st century should just exist in that space of a team that is going to be a gigantic pain in the ass for whoever, like Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, when they come in, whoever the top tier team in that conference is. Arkansas's existence is just going to be to make their life as difficult as possible. And they do it playing a brand of football, which may not be always pretty, but it's going to be physical, and they're going to beat you up. Our last game on the list of our main events is the Sunday night game. Again, a neutral site game where LSU is playing in New Orleans, and we know that certainly no LSU fans are going to make the trip to New Orleans to watch them play Florida State. 7:30 p.m. Sunday night, LSU with 3.5-point favorite at 67.5-point total in this game. Phil, you had this as a game you want to talk about, so I'll throw it to you because, again, this is a fact-finding mission game for me.
Yeah, fact-finding when it comes to I think people are really interested, myself included, Notre Dame fans included. There's going to be some people hate watching it. I'm not one of those people. I don't have much ill will towards Brian Kelly. I think he was a dick, but I think he brought Notre Dame back to relevance. So, like, we're always going to have that. So I'm really curious to see how he does in his first game coaching in the SEC. Notably, has always done pretty average in a big-time game, but this is a new environment, and New Orleans is going to be rocking in a way that, hate to say it, Notre Dame Stadium probably wasn't ever in his favor, because it's just fans are different down there. And so what I'm really curious about is the week 0 bump. So teams that have already gone and played a game and sorted out some of their potential issues, seen some new schemes, seen what players have done well or bad, even if it's against an average team. Florida State went out last week and just easily beat up on a very solid FCS team in Duquesne. But Florida State in the past few years, 5-10 years, has often gone out and laid an egg in those games and played pretty poorly. But I'm not as down on Mike Norvell as a lot of other people are. I'm also not. I also am pretty high on Jordan Travis as a quarterback, not just an athlete. So honestly, I like Florida State in this game, despite being at LSU. So I'm going to go on a limb here, and this is, again, doesn't feel like a huge underdog, but just with how average kind of LSU was, and can Brian Kelly turn it around? We don't know, but I'm going to go with who I think has the better experience to start this game off in week 1, and that's going to be Florida State. Now, I think Brian Kelly is going to turn LSU around and be a consistent 8 to 9-10 win team, but I'm going on a limb here, and I'm going to take Florida State.
I am going to say here, Dan, on FanDuel, the over-under is 51.5, not 67.5. I only know this because I have it on my card. I don't really know what to expect from this game. I think I like LSU because I'm not nearly as high on Mike Norvell or Jordan Travis as you are, Phil. I'm interested to see the LSU talent. I'm interested to see Jaden Daniels, the Arizona State transfer. Is he their starter quarterback? Did he win that job?
Unofficially, right?
It's basically they're not saying it, but it's
Yeah.
him. I'm interested to see how he looks in Brian Kelly's system, and kind of interested to see. We talked about this with Marcus Freeman and how Brian Kelly got conservative in big games. Well, this isn't necessarily a big top 5 ranked matchup. This is a big game against a big program for LSU. How Brian Kelly coaches this game, with it basically being a home game. I think there's a lot of talent in this game, and I'm interested to see where Mike Norvell has the program and what's going to be kind of a critical year for him, and how quickly Brian Kelly can get that talent playing it at the level they probably should be playing at, the level they weren't playing at under Coach O towards the end there.
The total in the Western Kentucky Hawaii game is 67.5, and it's the one above.
I figured it was one right next to it. Yeah.
I have nothing else to add except to be the wet blanket here again for Phil. My apologies, but did you know since 2007, a CFB team playing their second game facing a team playing their first game has gone 43.9% against the spread, or has won 43.9% of the time against the spread. So that was the thing I was kind of curious about with a lot of these games, like the Illinois game, which we'll talk about a little bit coming up here in a second. In fact, we can go ahead and jump into it. Our next bit here, we want to talk about just like each of us picking a game under the radar this weekend that we have something that we find interesting about it. And so Illinois is taking on Indiana in a game that we'll call that one a game that you just really have to love football to want to watch if you're not a fan of either team. Indiana is my Big Ten program of choice, so I might have it on a tablet or something. But what interests you about that one, Phil?
To see if Illinois looks like a competent football team when they're playing I think a below average football team, but a much better team than they faced last week in Wyoming. So Illinois put on, like, they kind of disguised themselves as Wisconsin of past, which makes sense with Brett Bielema being the coach. They played really good defense. The running back Chase Brown looked very good. Quarterback Tommy DeVito from Syracuse, again, is never going to put up big numbers, but like controlled the game. And so I'm really interested to see if Illinois can be a middle of the road, solid Big Ten team, because again, I think being from Illinois, we had the slightest period in which Illinois football was super fun back with Juice Williams at quarterback. And so it's a situation where I want to see Illinois back on the right track. And so again, this is a game where if they come out and it's like they lose like 14-16 or something, or if I think Illinois is really on the right track, they come out and they win this game like, 24-13 and control the time of possession. Chase Brown puts over 100 yards and two touchdowns. Tommy DeVito is like a 65-70% passer with 175 yards and no turnovers. So they played really sound football against a really bad team. So can they go in and play sound football against a below average team? Because if they do, I think they both cover and go into Bloomington with a win. But as Dan mentioned, you really got to love football to watch this one. And fortunately for me, I can find a storyline in any one of these games. And for me, it's seeing if Illinois is not for real, but like for average.
Yeah. The only thing I would say about this game is if you haven't kind of gotten into it, do some digging in on Illinois injury situation. They got banged up in some spots against Wyoming, which is why Indiana is a 3-point favorite in a game that I don't think Indiana should be favored against anybody in any other Power 5 team. But I mean, that's just something worth.
I thought some of those injuries live in games were cramping. Maybe not. Is their number one wide receiver out? Because they said he was cramping during the game.
Which one? They're down a wide receiver and a running back for the game tomorrow night.
Yeah, the running back I know is not their starting running back. I know Chase Brown is in. The wide receiver they said was cramping during the game, so he is their number one wide receiver. So apparently it wasn't cramping. But again, I still think if they're going to win this game, it's going to be power running the football with their offensive line.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, I want to see if they can run the football again. I don't expect them to run for 260 on the ground, but if they can establish the run, especially now if one of their top receiving threats is out, if they're able to run the football, control the line, I'm interested to see where that program is.
Fair enough. Matt, I know you wanted to talk about a game that is a rematch of a Group of 5 win over a Power 5 team from a year ago. So you want to talk about you have a fever and the prescription is more cowbell.
This is the second time I've talked about Mississippi State this year.
And I've made that joke every time you've talked
about
it.
And you know what? Later on this year when I talk about Mississippi State at some point, you will make it again. Honestly, I'm just more looking forward to this because the way this game ended last year with that controversial punt return, where I think Memphis had 2 number 4s on the field, which should have been a penalty there. And then it was legal touching, but the ball should have been dead. Then they pick it up, and then they run it back. Calvin Austin, I want to say the player's name was, picked it up, runs it back 94 yards for a punt return touchdown, and that's the game. I know Mississippi State fans are still bitter about it, as they probably should be, and that's probably some bulletin board material from Mike Leach, even though it's not like Memphis really did anything wrong. They just took advantage of a bad call from some officiating. Interested to see how Mississippi State comes out. Like we've talked about, there's some continuity there. Will Rogers is back in year 2 with Mike Leach. Interested to see how that defense plays as well. They got some starters coming back. I want to see if there's some anger, some intensity, how Mississippi State responds, bringing back that word, how they look after the controversial loss last year, because that's one of my favorite things in conference or college football, when you get that rematch the next year after a tough, controversial, weird loss, kind of how that game goes the next time around.
I think that's a fair point. And I think like this is a big one. I know you were big on their win total this year. Mississippi State.
This is one Mississippi State needs.
They gotta have. That's always kind of a fun thing, I guess, when you're betting on football and you do a season-long bet. If you have a game in week 1 and if you lose it, you're just the team you have an over on loses. You're just like, oh, well, that one's a loss. We chalk that one up as a loss. We move on. I've got nothing on that one. Phil, what do you have? Do you have anything on it?
No, that's it for me. I think you guys covered it, honestly.
Before we get to mine, real quick, this just came across my Twitter. Per Sports Business Journal, Fox got rights to air Penn State Purdue tonight in a trade with ESPN, in which Fox permitted Joe Buck to leave Fox with a year left on his contract to join Monday Night Football. So I'm sure that was probably a throw-in. That was like the 6th round pick. That wasn't like the main trade piece. That's the kind of thing where if that's the trade piece, you're just like you got Kevin Durant for a 2nd round pick kind of thing. Nevertheless, sorry. I just thought that was interesting. Mine, we're going to talk about, we'll probably be one of the shows that talks about FCS football more than most in this space. And my favorite FCS program, God love them, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, are on the road at Iowa at noon on Saturday. And while Iowa is going to win this game, I'm not sitting here telling you to take the Jackrabbits. I still think this is a really interesting game because scheduling a Dakota team, whether it's North Dakota, whether it's South Dakota, whether it's North Dakota State, whether it's South Dakota State, usually never a good idea. Go ahead and whatever the spread is on Arizona, North Dakota State in a couple weeks, just take the Bison there. But South Dakota State is the Sisyphus of the FCS. They are pushing a boulder up that hill every year, and that boulder, their Sisyphean task is trying to win an FCS national championship. Watching the team that's basically their arch rivals just because of quality, North Dakota State, win 9 of the last 11 FCS championships, yet over the last 8 meetings, South Dakota State is 4-4 against the Bison. They've won the last 2, and yet they have not won that FCS national championship. They are the only team in FCS this year that can win the national championship, not named North Dakota State, with all due respect to Montana. This is the only team that can, and the reason they can is because they've got some dudes. This team is loaded on. This team in the group of, I'm not sure there's a team in the group of 5 that has better talent on offense than South Dakota State has this year. They have tight end, Tucker Kraft, who's going to be the first FCS player taken in the draft. They have the Yankee twins, Jackson and Jaden, at wide receiver. They also are getting Landon Wolf, a transfer from Oklahoma State, back. He missed last season with an injury. They're excited about him. Isaiah Davis is a running back that's going to be very good. Mark Gronowski is their quarterback. He was awesome in the spring season as a true freshman and then tore his ACL in the national title game against Sam Houston. They would have won that game had he not gotten hurt. He's a guy who I think has some potential to really be an NFL guy next year. So this team is just going to be fun, and I love getting to see some of these really good FCS teams go play FBS opponents. Iowa's going to be too good for them. Iowa is just, we talk about them, they're rock solid, they're very good. If there's a weakness, South Dakota State's defense has lost some guys. Their offensive line's kind of a work in progress, which concerns me. But I really want to see some of these guys who have NFL potential on South Dakota State go up against an FBS team, just to kind of give us some film on them as we kind of talk about them for the next level. But this is a really good team. They're one of the handful of like really watchable on any week FCS teams in my mind. So it's a noon game, FS1, I think. So tablet the App State North Carolina game, or put the App State North Carolina game on the big TV. This one on a small TV. I promise you, they're an entertaining team worth watching.
Yeah, the Twins are great wide receivers. So I was a big fan of FCS playoffs last year. Holy Cross fell to Villanova in the second round, and then Villanova lost to SDSU 35-21. But the Jenkins Twins, they're like really good college football players, and it's going to be a fun game. And it's one where I think it could be a super close game. So again, I'm excited about that game because everyone loves the FCS, FBS potential upsets, or even just the good games. And this one has a real good potential to be just like a solid game.
Yeah, for sure.
Outside of any FCS, like strictly FCS dedicated podcast show, I want to correct you, Dan. I think we will be by far the show on the internet that talks the most about FCS football.
There are some out there that do their due diligence on these teams.
Fair
so
enough.
we're not gonna.
So do you two. I'm going to leave that to you guys mostly throughout this year, though, maybe until the end. My only thoughts on this game, I have to say it, go Hawks. Big Hawkeye guy. I have to be a Hawkeye guy now. Go Hawks.
Yep. I totally understand where you're coming from on that one.
All right. Behind you with a knife, Matt.
No, she's at work right now. She's not even watching. Hopefully she watches later. I guess this little part will tell me if she watches later. Go Hawks.
So, I mean, we're 56 and a half minutes into the show. We haven't given any bets. So we got to rip through the card. Are we just going to go each individually, or are we going to alternate? I can go over some of the ones I have for tonight, but no real big thoughts at this point. Most of the numbers that I bet you're not really going to be able to get anyway. So we can talk. Yeah. I only have three.
I got a big card.
Matt's got a big card. Phil, you start. Phil, give us your card.
Yeah, so I'm going to stick to 5 right now. So first game, I'm doing Pitt minus 7.5 at home. I think the game is super tight, but I think Pitt grinds them down with their defensive line, getting after a not super mobile JT Daniels and a late grinded out touchdown by Narduzzi to cover that 7.5. I like Utah 2.5 against Florida. I like a non-goateed Sean Clifford to beat Matt. I know you hate that one. A non-goateed Sean Clifford to win 3.5 over Purdue tonight. And then my FCS pick of the week. Again, this is the most homer pick I can have. Holy Cross minus 23.5 versus the mighty Merrimack team. So for people who don't know, yes, last year was a crushing defeat by Holy Cross. They lost in an upset to Merrimack at home on homecoming, just a completely wild game that Holy Cross had no business losing, let alone losing kind of big. So Holy Cross they went on to be a 10-3 second round FCS playoff team, return insane production with multiple NFL players on both sides of the ball. So one player to look out for on defense is Jacob Dobbs, who is number 40 on Bruce Feldman's freak list. So again, Holy Cross is in a weird place right now where they have like a decent amount of NFL talent in a Patriot League team, and the Patriot League is not good. And so Holy Cross is going to absolutely dominate this game because Bob Chesney will have this team coming out for blood because of the embarrassment that was last year. So the over-under is 47.5. Again, I like Holy Cross to score a lot of points, but I don't think Merrimack is going to score enough to cover that. So that's why I'm going Holy Cross minus 23.5. Aggressive homer pick, and I will own that till the death. And that's my card.
Tomorrow, or is it Saturday?
It's tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Ooh, is my preferred score?
I'll need a score update from you there, Phil, because I don't think that one's going to be on television out here.
I think it will be on television. Check it on ESPN Plus.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Do you want me to go next, and Phil and I can just go for a smoke break while Matt gives us his 18 picks today, or do we want Matt?
It's not 18. It's more like 12.
Dan, get through it because Matt's going to be here till tomorrow. So
Matt's going to take us for a walk. All right, just to recap what I have for today, like I said, the only one of these that I think you can get a similar number on right now is the under in the Pitt West Virginia game. I bet it at 52. It's 51.5 right now. Probably still okay to play that. Israel Abanikanda, Pitt's running back. I'm playing his over on his rushing total. They're going to want to run the ball. We've heard everything Narduzzi wants to say. He has established himself as the number one guy in that backfield this offseason, and He has looked really good supposedly in all camp. That number's been beat up though. I bet it at 52.5. It's inching closer towards 60. I'm on the Central Michigan on team total under tonight, 19. Went over my case for that the other day. And then I'm just putting this out here now because I'm going to clip this when I lose this bet tonight on a backdoor cover. As of right now, I don't have the number in front of me. The last time I looked, I had 7 points, a full touchdown and field goal worth of value on Fresno State. I bet it at 34. It is currently 41 against Cal Poly. So I'm just putting this out there to say I'm calling it now. I'm going to clip this when they end up giving up a late touchdown to win by 33 points. Math not my specialty. All right. So my card, I've got 3
We're not
picks.
math guys.
3 picks for you on the weekend. The first one I'm going to start with, I'm going to go with the over in the Army Coastal Carolina game. I've been going back and forth on, it's 53.5 is the total there. Going back and forth on a side. I can't make up my mind. I know these are 2 teams that like to run the ball a lot. Obviously, Army is going to run the ball a lot, and Service Academy over is dicey. However, we've seen the Army defensively struggle against really efficient, really good offenses. Coastal lost a ton. Like they lost Highly and Likely. That's actually their names. They lost their 2 best skill position guys on offense. However, I'm a big believer in not only Jamie Chadwell, but Grayson McCall to keep that offense moving. And Coastal Carolina lost 9 starters on defense. Now, they have the benefit of playing Gardner Webb next week, so they could really spend a lot of their offseason preparation getting ready for this Army offense. But that said, I think you're going to see big chunk plays in this game, and this is kind of more rooting to see some points scored in a game between 2 programs that I just find infinitely likable right now. So give me the over there. Give me the under Georgia State, South Carolina, under 56. Georgia State does the things you need to do to compete against a better team on the road. They have 10 super seniors. They run the hell out of the ball. 5.3 yards per carry last year. They returned 4 offensive linemen and almost 2,500 yards between their quarterback, Darren Granger, Tucker Gregg, then their running backs, Tucker Gregg and Jamias Williams, who started his career as a defensive back at South Carolina. They also forced 21 turnovers last year, had 92 tackles for a loss, so they create the havoc plays. This is just a kind of situation where if they're going to contend in this game, they're going to have to run the ball well, and they're going to have to force Spencer Rattler into mistakes. This is also the kind of game that is huge for Georgia State. Sean Elliott, their head coach, was the coach at South Carolina, got fired. There's going to be some emotion there. And I also think on the flip side, I don't think South Carolina is really going to want to go out and embarrass them. And on top of that, South Carolina's next 2 games at Arkansas, home against Georgia. I think their preferred method of victory here would be to win without having to put too much on tape for those 2 games. So I would expect low scoring. I wouldn't expect South Carolina to really try to run it up. So I like the under there. And then the final one, I bet it at 21.5, but the current line is 22.5. Clemson, lay 'em and laugh at Georgia Tech. The numbers I've seen from most smart people have it as it should be 25, 26. I don't care. If it gets up to 28, bet it. I do not care. I know a lot of people are worried about Clemson's offense and blah, blah, blah. DJ wasn't good last year and so on and so forth. And Clemson's got all these great running backs and so on and so forth. Georgia Tech could not stop the 3 of us. It could have been the 3 of us with one of us lining up, snapping the ball, one of us throwing to the other. The Georgia Tech secondary still could not have stopped anybody last year. And the Clemson-Georgia Tech game last year was ugly. I get it. I understand it. This Clemson team is going to have a chip on their shoulder this year. After all the shit that people have talked about how bad their offense is, this is just a bad situation for Georgia Tech. And my last note on Georgia Tech is, let's see if I do have the tweet here. PFF put out their top 10 defensive lines in college football this year. Georgia Tech plays the number 2 defensive line in Clemson, the number 3 defensive line in Georgia, the number 6 defensive line in Pittsburgh, and the number 7 defensive line in Miami. And oh, by the way, that's wrong. Clemson has the best defensive line in college football because
We haven't won.
Alabama.
Alabama.
And Alabama's defensive line is great, but they're like that. Do you consider Will Anderson and lineman?
No, he's a linebacker.
Linebacker. So whatever. 3 picks. There you go, Matt. I'm gonna go for a walk. I'll come back in an hour when we've gotten through all of your. Don't kidding.
I won't get too deep.
I will make a request because I didn't want to know
Sure.
what your pick was until we were on the air, but I know you said you had a pick in the Army Coastal game. So if you could at least start.
I took it off the card. Took it off.
Oh, you did?
I didn't like it. The card has changed probably 3 or 4 different times throughout the show. I don't know if you guys can see me looking down at my phone or not. It's changed.
So unofficially, it's not on the card officially, but what was it that got removed?
I was actually on the under at first, but I'm a little bit scared. It just scared me off with Army's defense. It's not worth it for me, and that's a game that, credit me for maturing, took it off the card because I don't know enough about both teams and I want to see them before actually placing the bets. So again, shout out me. We're going to start Purdue plus 3.5. I've been talking about them for the last 2 weeks. I really like them tonight. Minnesota minus 21.5 in the first half. And the Jerry Kill Bowl, I think they're going to win that game big, but you never know in the second half if they're up, 31 points, if PJ Fleck takes starters out or what goes on there. I like UCLA minus 23.5 at home against Bowling Green. Arkansas, I am going to lay the 6 points. I think that's a very big game for them. I don't think it's as big of a game for Cincinnati. Utah minus 2.5 at Florida. I'm going Hendon Hooker over 269.5 pass yards tonight against Ball State. Dylan Gabriel over 253.5 passing yards against UTEP. I'm on similar mindset as Dan with Clemson, except I'm taking their first half minus 12.5 against Georgia Tech. Notre Dame plus the 18. FSU, LSU over 51.5. I really like LSU's offense. I think that's kind of where a lot of their talent is. Florida State lost a ton on defense. I think they're going to put up some points, and then I think Florida State will eventually score enough on their own. BYU laying 12 on the road at USF. I think this is a really, really good BYU team, bringing back a whole lot of talent that is going to need style points. And not that they're going to be a playoff team, but they're going to go in this year with the mindset of they could be last year's Cincinnati, and they're going to have to win every game they play and put up style points. So I think they're going to try and score quite a bit against the USF team that hasn't been good in a long time. And lastly, Holy Cross, we're laying the 23.5 against Merrimack.
There we go.
That was the last second add to the card.
Yes.
That place to our coast.
Let's see. Show solidarity.
What do you guys think? That wasn't too bad.
Wait,
No.
what is, I guess my book of choice only has tonight's. No? I don't know.
No free ads. What is your book of choice?
I use BetUS because it's the one I have the most amount of money in right now. I don't particularly care for that book one way or another, but every single golf outright I hit this year for some reason was in that book. So
it's a superstitious thing.
Yeah. No, it's not the superstitious thing. It's just the one that's got the most money, so I don't feel as bad.
That too. For me, it'd be
no opinion on whatsoever. Yeah, I wanted to come up with an FCS bet this week, and I don't really have one that I like. I wanted to bet the North Dakota State Drake game, because that game is going to be hilarious. That's going to be that might be like a 50-0 game. Yeah, I just want to see if anybody has put a lineup on that game at all, and I don't think they have. And I really wish they would.
There isn't a line that could be big enough for that game.
Let me see. So do they have all the games left here? Let me see. Who was it? We're talking Holy Cross. I'm on DraftKings. FanDuel doesn't have it. Hopefully they'll put more FCS games up tomorrow, and I will show.
Dan will be tweeting his FCS picks. You can bet.
I will show the solidarity that one out with you guys. Well,
that's the team. That's the Blogger Bowl team pick this week. Holy Cross minus 23.
Holy Cross. The Blogger Bowl FCS banger of the week. Holy Cross.
Call it the Merrimack Blood Game.
We are out for. I can't remember. There was a game last year on our old show with Motoy from WinBet. He's a really big FCS guy too, and Merrimack was the game one week. I can't remember which side he was on, but I think we ended up betting that one and winning it. I don't remember who it was, but that's a really bad story. Or an hour and 8 minutes in. Is there anything else we have not covered? Or are you guys good?
No, I'm just happy. I'm happy college football's back.
Me too. My favorite sports gambling thing I saw this week is Bet Online has a prop where you can bet on an over-under on the number of teams Desmond Howard picked to go to the college football playoff if they will actually make the playoff. Heavily juiced to the under 0.5 if you missed it. Pittsburgh, Texas A&M, Baylor, and Michigan were his picks. I don't remember in what order. But I appreciate the commitment to trolling and how stupid preseason picks shows are, because none of it matters. And if you don't pick everyone's just going to pick Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, and Ohio State. So, you might as well be a little bit creative there. Phil, you have anything else you want to add, or are we good to call it a day?
I just can't wait to watch football on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
God, it's going to be
Monday.
And Monday.
Enjoy your Labor Day weekend.
Go to Tech and Clemson. It's going to be like 8 minutes, and then be like, ugh, that's enough.
I'm going to watch the first half to make sure my wife covers.
First half, and then you're good. All right. Well, if that is that, we will be back on Tuesday to recap week 1 and start the prep for week 2, where you can bet that I will have some thoughts on the showdown in Austin between Alabama and Texas. Go Irish, hook 'em horns, and we will talk to you next week.